This is a great group. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to this conversation. So as Megan mentioned, I've been in your shoes recently, and I know sometimes the day is filled with firefighting, but typically you as the deputy are responsible for the more operational aspects, but really sometimes where the rubber hits the road in terms of the day-to-day activities. So tell us a little bit about a day in the life as a deputy and what that looks like in your component. Anybody want to start? Kristin, you're up.
The closest
All right.
one first.
You volunteered.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for having me today. I would say TSA is a little unique. We are very mission-driven folks, so I wouldn't say that my role is particularly traditional. I would say that we do a lot with a little bit, and our executive management team is really a partnership, and so we take the divide and conquer mentality. We're all involved in a lot of different things. So, 1 minute I could be meeting with the administrator, and then, 2 hours later I might send the executive director for, service delivery to meet with the administrator. We are a team, and we work together, and we divide and conquer the strategy. We work together on I can't say it, but you know what I mean. It's tactical day-to-day.
They got it.
Can't speak. But we're working through all of that together as a team. So that's what the most important thing is, and my role is encouraging that team to be able to go out and feel empowered to do their job every day to meet the mission that we have at hand.
But we could do from the Google side too. Tony, tell us a day in your life.
A day in my life supporting customers is very similar. It can be very tactical at times, mixed with long-term strategic application, right? And by that I mean advising, thinking about 2- and 3-year plans, and really partnering strategically on the long-term side. On the tactical side, it's very immediacy driven, right? We really do focus on mission and mission outcomes. And as a partner in the ecosystem, if a component of DHS needs our services, we're generally very responsive with or without contract in place. Might just be advisory on how do we, or what do you recommend, or do you have, but we're always happy to be a partner to the different components and provide answers to questions and support as needed.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I would love to say that a day in my life is not just answering questions about ChatGPT. It's not. I would say the key word that describes what my team does at SAIC is an operational bridge. So that is, how do we turn strategy into action, and how do we take IT and technology and then place it to solve mission problems? And so a lot of what our day looks like is just like Tony, advising, consulting, but really being that translator between the technical side and the mission side. And I have the pleasure of working across, of course, Homeland Security, but also Department of Defense and the intelligence community. And so every day we're trying to solve these data challenges, we're trying to solve these mission challenges with unique and innovative solutions. And what I've found is it doesn't matter the agency, either within the Department of Homeland Security or really anywhere in the government or the DoD or the intelligence community. The good news is a lot of the data problems are very similar that people are trying to solve, and a lot of the challenges they have with their data is very similar. So there's a lot of places that we can take lessons learned and apply to other organizations. So that's generally what a day in my life's like.
Good afternoon, everybody. For us, similar to what Kristin had indicated, it's really starting out with operations, both from a network standpoint, but also a security standpoint, making sure that all of the systems are up. In the case of what we're seeing today in the news, understanding what is happening in terms of deployment for the mission, making sure that we're out there to support the communities, preparing for responding to and helping after disasters when they do strike. And then in that operational mix, having an opportunity to continue to look at innovation and modernization and where we can take the systems to the next level so that we can utilize things like maybe not ChatGPT, but AI, generative AI, et cetera, to help with the grants process and the claims process throughout FEMA. And then dealing with the day-to-day contracts, budgetary issues, process-related issues, et cetera. And then a key to all of that is the partnership that we have with all of you, with all of our different SIs, vendors that are helping us with the mission that we have day to day.
All right, it's easy to go last. I just say ditto. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. CBP is very similar, right? We have the same set of challenges. At the end of the day, we support the men and women in uniform, whether it's Office of Field Operations or Border Patrol, but we also have a trade community. In my current role as a deputy CIO, I oversee all the software applications, and my phone never stops ringing. That means there's an outage somewhere, right? And I oversee all of our cargo applications, passenger applications, targeting applications, and Border Patrol applications. And so it's 24/7, 365, right? When a fish broker cannot get their fish on a plane, and there's a demand for sushi in New York and Los Angeles and 5-star hotels, they'll call me 30 times a night, like whether it's 2 a.m. in the morning or 3 a.m. in the morning. So it's never a dull moment, right? And we understand that, and I think that's part of the overall mission. And I echo the sentiments from all of my other fellow panelists. It's a very challenging mission, but that's what makes it interesting.
Never a dull moment. I think we can probably all say that one, Jay. So I will have plenty of time for questions, so think about what you want to ask, but I'll give the panel a chance to answer another question. You just heard from the acquisition offices and the DHS Deputy CPO about where they're headed in terms of leaning in, exploring new ways of approaching acquisitions. So I want to ask the team, what kinds of things are you doing within your component to acquire IT in an accelerated fashion in support of the mission? So I'll maybe skip ahead to Kevin on that one.
Sure. Thank you. So we're working closely we have a number of different acquisitions upcoming, both on the operations side, but also on the security side. So working closely with our procurement shop within FEMA, when needed, working closely with the procurement shop at the headquarters level within DHS, and then with our partners like a GSA. And one of the things we are really working to do is to make sure that we clearly define our requirements, as mentioned in the prior panel, doing all of our market research to understand where the technology is, who out in industry can help us meet our particular requirements, when appropriate, doing RFIs, and then really tightening those requirements down, getting the message out to industry that we have these opportunities upcoming, and then working with the right partners, whether that's in our headquarters or with GSA, to get the different requisitions out on the street. And if we do that, following the process, being fair and open, and do it in the right way, we're doing everything we can to avoid protests. It's virtually everything I've seen throughout my years with the government. That's just a way of life that we have to deal with. But to the extent that we can minimize protest, show industry that we are being fair and open, and then successfully award the work, then working to do that as quickly as possible to hit the ground running. So that's our perspective.
So Jay, I keep hearing about the OTAs that you're doing at CBP, so you want to tell us more about that?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, different Jay.
You do it.
I beat him on the number of letters in my last name, though.
I get to say ditto at the end.
That's a great question, Heidi. So as I mentioned, CBP is 24/7, 365, right? Our contract demands are also extensive and complex. The four organizations I manage together have over 250 agile teams, right? And almost 400 federal staff and over 3,000 contractors that we depend on a daily basis. And those are the large procurement efforts, the traditional procurement efforts. But our mission demands that we're able to come up with solutions that our officers and agents need on demand at the speed of mission, right? So which means we have to look at unique contracting methods to be able to get those services out and seek industry's help to get those services out to our officers and agents. Just this last year, we have awarded 2 such contracts, right? One is, I'll start with anomaly detection algorithm contract. We partnered with Invent, our CTO's organization, and we leverage DHS CSO, Commercial Solutions Openings. It's a unique contract methodology, and it's a pretty streamlined and a simplified way of providing industry a specific use case and say, give us the solutions for it, like keeping it nimble. And we did that in 2 phases. Right? In the first phase, we asked them to provide us a written proposal, a written solution, right? Which gave us also an opportunity to meet with industry and have them either do an oral presentation or also do a tech demo. And then the second phase was the full proposal, right? What this did was allowed several industry partners and commercial partners with technology that's out there to be able to come and provide the government with that specific service, especially in the AI space, right? And what this did, the ADA contract, I'll go a little into that, what ADA is we are using AI to augment the officers and provide the officers with a toolkit that allows them to process cargo and passengers in the POV, in the land environment, as well as the truck environment, in the non-intrusive inspection space. Right? It's just another tool that the officer will be able to leverage. And I'm glad to say that we were able to award that contract with several vendors, and we're about to even try the pilots out in several POVs by partnering with OFO and industry and getting those solutions out there. And super excited about that, and I think we even have a briefing coming up with our commissioner tomorrow to give him a timeline on what that project's going to be like. That's one of them, and then there's the other one that we did was with enterprise small business, which was another game changer for us. Because it's the first time ever we were able to do a multi-BPA specific to cater towards small businesses to come in and show their capabilities to the government. And that's one of a kind in my experience in CBP, where we had one contract vehicle, but 2 different scopes, which covered both infrastructure side as well as the software development side. And we were able to award that contract successfully and even get past all the protests that came with it, right? And that's a game changer for us because now we have a good group of small businesses that we can leverage to be able to get solutions faster to our customers.
Kristin, anything you want to add on the acquisition side?
Yeah, I would just add that, I work closely with Ms. Tina Thompson, who was up here earlier, and we strategize on opportunities specific when we did our fast contract recompetes. We look to leverage a lot of the same processes and practices that are in the pill to be able to expedite our process as well. So, that came to oral presentations, down selecting, in some cases advisory down select boards. So we're really looking to see how we can be more efficient with our documentation process and making sure that we give vendors an opportunity to come in and see if they have an opportunity to showcase their capabilities without making it a long, drawn-out process to get to the end.
Yeah, I would echo that at ICE, definitely trying to, use some of the pill techniques, focus more on reducing documentation. Okay. Go ahead.
How's it going? Thomas Walker, Palo Alto Networks. So my question is, I guess, start with Jay, but we'll work backwards. How are you guys approaching the threat of adversarial AI, right? So one of the things that I've come to kind of realize is that everyone's incorporating all these great products and things like that, but we're giving them information, and then, frankly, most of you guys have data sets out there that are ripe for mining. So, what tools, strategies, or whatever are you guys using to kind of guarantee your enterprise now and in the future?
This is
Starting
this
with that
Jay or
Jay or
that
this
Jay? Which Jay do you want us to go? I could go. Right? You could have stated the question with what keeps you up at night, right? And that would have answered that question. To be honest with you, that's a great question, and it's something that I heard from our leadership in CBP, our Border Patrol leadership and our OFO leadership, where our adversaries in the southern border are using drone technology and leveraging AI to look at Border Patrol agents' movements and placements in a given day to see how they can use that data in being able to leverage AI and use the data to say where they can bring their drugs into our country. It's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. And how we try to get out of the game is to be able to invest in the same technology to be able to get ahead of our adversaries, right? It's constant awareness of what the adversaries are trying to do and how can we counter that. The challenge there for us is the adversaries are spending a lot more money and effort into building these capabilities to scheme the system, and they just have to be right once. We have to be right, and we have to be able to prevent those deaths 100% of the time. And that's the challenge that our officers and agents that are putting their life on the line day in and day out in these adverse conditions. And our job as IT professionals is to be able to give them the tools, whether it's systems, whether it's leveraging AI. It's just not AI in a vacuum, right? It's AI working hand in hand and integrating with our systems, our data. And it comes from how we manage those systems and how we leverage those AIs in a meaningful fashion to be able to counter that. It's easier said than done, right?
One of the things that we need to do, and I think everybody needs to do this, is just understand how the data is being used, what you're connecting out to, et cetera. So it starts with the requirements and the design of how we would want to apply AI to any application within our mission space, working with a vendor to understand where the data repositories are, to the extent that we can set up a sandbox and still benefit from the various features of AI, and really working closely with our partners to design that, and to the extent that we have, like FedRAMP, for example, FedRAMP environments where we have a good understanding of how the data is being used, making sure that any of our government agencies, that any of our data is going out to the wider internet without us knowing it or being able to really manage and control it. So all of that comes into the design process, and then once we have a good sense that the data is properly managed and is being managed in a responsible way, a secure way, we can then look at how we apply that to the various applications.
I would say from an industry perspective, it's our duty as an integrator and as a team that is going out and operationalizing AI for mission that we have to harden these systems and we have to protect them against adversarial machine learning. So that's a new and up and coming thing that everyone's going to start hearing more and more about. The more AI you put into the field, especially at the edge, so it's really applicable to CBP and to other DHS organizations, whether it's hardware based or software based, how your models are out there. Your models are ripe for attack. So what I think you're going to see is a fusion between the AI landscape and the cyber landscape, and you're going to need systems in place to protect these models. So we talk a lot about machine learning operations, and we talk about how do we train models, and how do we make sure we understand the data sets aren't biased, and how do we verify those models and test them and then deploy them, but then it kind of stops there. And nobody really thinks about what happens after deployment other than do we have enough compute power to do that inference. And the key, and your point is a great one, is the adversaries are attacking these models. There's over 50 different ways they can attack models right now, but the three most prolific and potentially some of the most dangerous are a data poisoning attack, where they can essentially drop new data off your sensors or your systems to force a shift in the model output. The second one's an inversion attack, where they can go in and they can reverse engineer what logic is in the model to go ahead and figure out how to make a decision and then alter it. And the last one, and you were alluding to this, is an exfiltration attack where they can work their way back to the training data and essentially break that and pull information out of the models. These are things that are happening today, as you said, at the border as well as all over the world. And so what you need is a continuous process, continuous monitoring, post-verification, looking for these types of things, and this is really that combination of AI and cyber. But you also need to start looking at techniques around counter AI. How do you effectively defend against that if your model is being attacked? So it's about the awareness, it's about the monitoring, and it's about how do we defend those models and make sure that we stop an attack as it's happening.
Yes to all of that, agree completely. And I'm in a unique position that I am at the intersection. I run 3 businesses, but 2 of them, data, AI, and security. As Jay just said, they're coming together, they're fusing. What I think about with your question, sir, is a couple of things. Off the top, right? AI, at Google, we're embedding AI into all of our products to help customers and partners really automate the rudimentary tasks, right? And our adversaries, as noted, they are deep-pocketed, they've got the best of the best technology, they're innovating faster than public sector is, right? So the defense side of it, how do we defend against AI for, illicit use? Got to automate as much of the detect and response that you possibly can so that your best people can really focus on the new threats or the anomalies that you're not even sure are true threats. But that's really where the human factor has got to continue to be focused. With that, though, comes constant training and education of professionals in DHS and all the components, as well as partners across industry. And we recognize this is a gap and a challenge. We've got a lot of free training out there on this topic in this space, just so that our ecosystem, to include public sector agencies and our partner ecosystem, can stay up and current, right? Last thing I'll say, because I could go on this topic for days, but shadow IT, right? If we don't create the environments, we don't create the wherewithal for employees to leverage tech and have a choice in technology, right? Give them access to what is FedRAMP High, right? Give them access to what's accredited, give them access to what's ATO'd, and let them choose. Because if you don't do that, they're going to go out and they're going to find a way. And as Jay was saying, with the access to the data out there, and I advocate for a secure API platform, right? So that you've got governance, data lineage, you know what applications are talking to what. And if you do have an incident, you're able to very quickly ascertain, was that permitted or not permitted? Is this the needle in the haystack or not? Otherwise, you've got APIs being built that are accessing data in cloud and remote systems, and they're running against AI models that may even be authorized, but that data may not be authorized, and that creates additional surface risk for you. But you can, again, think about the 360 view. It is best practices and policy, it is education and training, and then it's actually, in addition to that, providing the environments and the technology so that it can be not just prototype, but operationalized in a structured way.
Can I just foot stomp one thing here?
Sure.
For those in the audience and the government. That's a really important point about making technology accessible to your users, otherwise they're going to find a way. I won't name the government agency, but we're working with a government agency who has been hesitant to adopt even basic large language models and things like that for code developers. And they brought in a new CTO, and he sort of looked at the landscape and he said, I need to get ahead of this. I know my code developers are going off of their GFE computers onto their personal computers or other computers. They're going on to chat sites like Bard or GPT or any of these, Mistral, whatever it might be, and they're developing code, and then they're bringing it back to government systems. And so he said, I got to get ahead of this. This is only going to get worse. I'm not going to be able to shut it down. We need an example now where we can go into a FedRAMP High environment and expose code or anything that we're trying to ask to these models in that GovCloud I environment so that they can get rid of that shadow IT problem. So it's really something to think about, that just because we're saying no because it's the way we've always done it doesn't mean that the folks coming in aren't going to find other ways to do it.
No, they just became my best friends when they said shadow IT. When you say no to shadow IT. No, that's a great point.
Well, I would just say, to answer your question, lots of great points from the other panelists, but I would add that, we're really focused on the fundamentals, right? Looking at our current landscape, how we can do better at cybersecurity, how we can embed zero trust, training our information and assurance folks on AI so that they understand how to use these tools and how to benefit from those tools. AI is not new for us. Generative AI is new for us, but we've been doing machine learning and biometric matching for a while at TSA. So, we're really exploring what generative AI would mean for us and what wouldn't make sense for us, right? So as we do that, it requires us to educate everyone on what the fundamentals of AI are, how to use these tools. The ones that are approved by DHS, we're giving folks access to those so that they do have the access to the tools that are approved. But we're really cautious about introducing new tools without further investigating and making sure that we can protect our information, because security is our middle name, and we're really focused on that.
Yeah, some good points. I agree on the fusion of cyber and AI, those two coming together, as well as certainly the training aspect is important. So, definitely looking at that in terms of our federal staff and bringing them up to speed. But it also would not be a panel these days if we didn't talk about AI. So we've got that question covered. Is there a question back in the back?
Hey, good afternoon. Appreciate you all being here today. Michael Scott with Oracle. Kevin, you mentioned FedRAMP, and from where we sit, it seems like there is still continues a very onerous process there. When you talk about operationalizing technology, I'm curious from where you all sit if you share those same feelings, thoughts about the whole FedRAMP process, and if so, what DHS can do, is doing to improve that?
I'll start. I can't speak for DHS headquarters role with the FedRAMP process, and I can't speak for GSA, so I just want to caveat that to start out. But in terms of our experience with FedRAMP, I know from when I was with CISA before, when I was with DOJ, that there have been, it's not as fast a process, and sometimes the thoroughness slows the process down, but that in many ways is to be expected because of the complexities and because we, the government, are looking to be able to share the ATOs, or at least the package with other agencies. So it has to be done well. I know in our interactions with GSA and even with DHS headquarters, they have been undertaking changes to make the process more streamlined. So I think we need to give that some time, both with all the participants, to see how those changes help the whole process. But from my perspective in the government, I feel that the concept of FedRAMP makes a lot of sense, and it's the ability to use once, or do once and use many across the various agencies. And I think we need to continue to look at how we can make it work, even where there are times where it has been slow or has not been fully effective. So I think that each agency has the ability to develop their own ATO and then share it into the program and share it with other agencies. So we will continue to look at that. As you all know, that takes time, it takes resources, et cetera. So I think we look at what's already available. I know the queues can be long for the folks in industry submitting their products for FedRAMP usage. And to the extent that in the past that we've been able to sponsor a particular product, we will do that. But I think it's a matter of looking at what is available, looking at the technologies that we're looking at now through our market research, and seeing where we can partner with the folks in industry, partner with GSA to potentially get something through the queue as fast as possible, and make it useful for us, but also make it available for the other folks in the government community. I don't know if that fully answered your question, but I think that in summary, I think some of the streamlining is helping, but time will tell if it really hits the mark for all the folks involved.
Anybody else want to tackle that?
As a software solutions provider, right, I share your frustration because I want to be able to use any new product or anything that comes out in the market quickly, right, to be able to take advantage of it. But that's where the partnership with industry comes in. I echo what we talked about is it's industry being able to provide all the details that the government needs, and then us working with government hand in hand to be able to streamline this process. We are looking for ideas to how to make this process better. So it has to be a partnership between industry and the government.
Rick Smith, Mantech. Good to see some friendly faces up at the panel here. So I have a question about saving costs. We know that O&M costs in the cloud are getting more and more expensive. We have finite budgets, obviously, that you guys got to work with every year, with the CR coming up and all those things that Tom so eloquently talked about. What kinds of things are you doing with the cloud and keeping cost avoidance type things are you doing to keep costs low? I'm just curious of just the general ideas around that, of how you're doing that.
You want to start?
I could
Yeah,
jump
go
in
ahead, Chris.
and just say, one thing that we're doing as we're looking at our multi-cloud environment, we are restructuring and reshaping our data architecture, because if we can streamline and simplify that, that'll save us a lot of money, because we have lots of data at TSA, and actually not all of the data is accessible to where it needs to be, and that's part of our journey to the multi-cloud, is so that we can enable that better. But definitely, starting with the data piece is a huge cost efficiency for us that we see.
I was going to echo that. It starts with data, right? We have a massive amount of data in CVPs with holdings. But the data is also enhanced for various purposes. For example, I can give you passenger data and cargo data is collected in its raw form at the primary systems, right? Then it's enhanced for our enforcement type actions. And all of these data are stored in multiple copies. As we are in the process of migrating our applications over to the cloud and multi-cloud, what we're looking at is how do we streamline this data? How do we build the data lake and delta lake so we're not duplicating data across all of these systems and platforms? That's where the cost avoidance is going to come from. And if you manage our data well, I think that would be a big cost avoidance. But I do want to make sure that people understand that moving to cloud is not cheap, right? There is a false perception, primarily from our customer side, that believe that, hey, you got all this on-premise infrastructure, and once you get rid of it, you're going to see $20 million in savings or $30 million in savings, without understanding that you're still paying for those services in the cloud once you migrate them over, right? And especially when you're in a transitional state where you have some on-premise footprint and some cloud footprint, the biggest challenge is being able to explain to our trusted partners and being able to educate them on cloud. Moving to cloud doesn't mean that it's cheaper. You're just transferring the cost. What you're avoiding from a cost standpoint is also long-term. Like if you buy a servers for $10 million, for example, right? Every 20 years, you'd have to refresh that, and that's sunk cost, right? And you have to invest another $20, $30 million in buying those infrastructure. By migrating to the cloud, not only are you getting better services, you don't have to worry about that full tech refresh every 20 years, every 10 years, and whatever it is. And that's the constant communication between us and the trusted partners in explaining to them how we're leveraging the cloud, how we're leveraging the benefits of the cloud, what are the costs associated with it, and being transparent about it and being able to show them the value there is going to get us the buy-in from our trusted partners and industry to be able to show what the cloud costs are actually, like being transparent about it.
And I like the start with the data strategy, but it's also the overall cloud strategy. I think every one that I've talked to in the government. It's now a multi-cloud strategy, but you as a customer want to avoid multi-cloud sprawl where you have virtually every cloud provider out there. So I think for me, it comes down to understanding your strategy and then really looking at achieving transparency across the board. Because I think when we're working with customers that have on-prem processing, we don't start the conversation anymore that if you go to the cloud, you're going to save money. I think you can. I think as Jay pointed out, Kristin pointed out, it's understanding where you can achieve the efficiencies, and that's where the transparency comes in. You really have to understand all of your costs before that you may not have understood what those costs were to be able to do an apples-to-apples comparison as to what's happening in the cloud. So we have some customers that were moving to the cloud, and when we were managing their processing on-prem, they did not realize all the costs that were associated with that. We, at the headquarters level, were assuming some of those costs. So now, in the transparency, we're putting all of those costs on the table so that we can understand what the costs are for the whole organization, what the costs are out in the cloud. And to Jay's point, the gains that we get from security, from overall maintenance, and then being able to do have an honest conversation, do an honest comparison as to what are the true costs here, where the efficiencies are, where we need to sit down with our cloud providers and have an honest conversation that this is costing a little more than we thought it should, and be able to move forward from there. So.
And I'll just comment on the ICE side. For us, it's really just some of the basics, just, using the tools that providers, that the cloud providers have to see, monitor our spend, looking to where we can spend things down when not in use, taking advantage of savings plans to buy in advance. So even just some of those basics has been helpful for us at ICE.
I would add that we're constantly working to optimize our software, especially in the AI space, so that it consumes less. And models, purpose-built models, built specific to the task, so that they aren't driving a lot of consumption and data consumption. When it comes to the data realm, there's a huge cost there. And in architecture models, right, you've got ways to access that data, just the data you need, without having to move it all and incur that cost. So there are a lot of different ways to address cost. And in a multi-cloud environment, we're working with many of our customers to help them with cloud cost management. And basically, that's a fancy way of saying data analytics on your cloud services so that you can understand the application, the data, the network, and where are you exceeding what you had planned, and what are the root cause reasons for that, to help our customers control that multi-cloud cost, right? Because as was said, it's starting to prove in unstructured environments to be more costly than originally planned, right? But there are so many different ways to monitor and manage and control that cost. You just got to work with your partners to really challenge them to help you optimize, especially in the multi-cloud world.
Yeah, and I'll just add there, so we talked a lot about the data. The data is important. You have a lot of agencies and organizations that I've encountered where you're duplicating the data on multiple systems, multiple networks, multiple instances, and so you're double, triple, sometimes quadruple paying for expensive storage. So that's one thing you have to look at, and of course there's AI tools to look at how you deduplicate and you deconflict against that data. The other thing that we've found in building models are training intensive, which means they're compute intensive, and compute intensive means you're gonna rack up some costs with the cloud providers. What we have found is that just good cluster policy management and making sure that all of your compute clusters are extremely elastic makes a huge difference. So shut them down at the end of the day. You don't necessarily need a warm pool, right? You can completely shut it down. Maybe it takes a little longer to start up. You don't need to reserve instances. Make sure that you're targeting the compute that you need for what you're using, so you're not overgearing, right? You're not using GPUs to compute an Excel spreadsheet. And make sure you're using what you need to be using. We found both on our side as a company who develops AI, but also integrating in our customer spaces, we can reduce costs sometimes more than 40%. with good cluster policies.
Question back there?
If it's okay with you guys, I want to stay with the cost a little bit more. Venkat Kodamudi, I'm with Unisant, was sitting at some of your shoes 10 years ago as a senior leader at TSA, tried to start the cloud journey those days. But my question is following on Rich's angle. What are some of your strategies on other strategies? I know data analytics is one of them, on trying to marry the concept of commodity, cloud as a commodity and pay by the drink on one side, and the 1 year, 2 year color of money on the other side. So it's kind of hard to plan, right? So what are some of your strategies around that?
Great question, great question. And it's always hard, right? In a budget-constrained environment that we currently are in, and in an election cycle, it's always hard. And it's always a mad scramble trying to find funding to fund contracts at the last minute, right? And that goes back to the transparency aspect of the cloud cost that I spoke about earlier, in making sure our customers understand what the actual cost of managing and maintaining and building those applications in the cloud are going to be, or regardless of infrastructure, right? And providing that transparency. So what we've done in CBP is we've built our cloud dashboard that shows costs and also projects costs for a certain number of months, saying, like, the cost of running application A, B, and C is going to be X amount of dollars, and most of our cloud providers and our partners provide that transparency to us up front, depending on the amount of utilization, compute, storage, etc. Right? It's not something that's rocket science. We are able to plan for those costs up front and being able to transparently show that to our customers, saying that this is what we project your cost to be for this fiscal year up front, right? And then being able to track that on a monthly basis. So what we do is we have monthly meetings with our customers, our trusted partners, whether it's Office of Trade or Office of Field Operations or Border Patrol. We have a meeting with them, and the product owners and the program managers sit down together and go over their costs, right? And bake in those cloud costs, those ONS costs, and be able to show them on a dashboard real time and actually give them access to this data upfront at their fingertips. That's where the buy-in comes in. So now, even before we go back to our trusted partners, say, hey, we need to execute our contract, and it's coming up on September 1st, and I know it's the end of the fiscal year, and you're all budget constrained, but we need to find this contract. Before we even ask that, our trusted partners are coming to us saying, hey, I think I need to pay you cloud money, and I need to pay you infrastructure money. And, oh, by the way, budget sweeps are coming up. We're very close to 9:30. So I know procurement staff are probably freaking out in the next 3 days when all of our finance folks want to balance the budget and close the books for the end of the fiscal year, right? This always comes up. And having the transparency up front helps get the buy-in from our trusted partners to be able to plan for it. Whether it's 1 year money, 2 year money, and all of that is just semantics, right? And there is an option, there are ways to work around that by working closely with your procurement chops.
I would just add that we also work closely with our customers, right? What is the outcome that they're trying to achieve? We have a lot of tools in our toolbox, right? It could be leveraging an existing application with some minor tweaks that could save them a lot of money that we might be able to do at very low cost right away versus having to plan ahead for. It could be sharing and packaging an application with one of our sister organizations to say, we built this out, you don't have it, it's close to what you need, and we'd be happy to share that because we're looking for economies of scale. We're looking for how we can maximize the investments that we do have, and looking at, how we can help those customers plan for the future, and that crawl, walk, run approach, right? We might have something small and scrappy we can get them started with, but help them understand what it's going to cost to get to the long-term solution.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think it comes down, in my mind, to two things. It's having a good strategy for how you want to use cloud in your organization. But number two, understanding how the government budget process works. So right now, we're all in a budget-constrained environment. We're probably going to be there for a year or two longer at least. So right now, one of the things we're working to do is to make sure that based on our cloud strategy, that we have enough budget, that we're advocating for the budget in this upcoming fiscal year to cover down on the cloud that we're using operationally for mission purposes. But in terms of that strategy and not knowing where technology, where the models are going to be, where the new technologies are going to be 3 years from now, working to build into our budget projections some cost to cover the ability to at least pilot new technology, and then just crossing our fingers when this time of year rolls around that we get a budget that allows us not only to cover down and sustain what we have in the cloud, but also to be able to go to that next level and really bring the technology to support the mission.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. I have a question. I want to take it from the very exciting cloud stuff to something a little more mundane, governance and compliance. We all need to do it for FTARA. You all have to deal with the acquisition lifecycle framework, the SELC, and you know, any new law that comes out. Have you guys looked at any automation of the governance and compliance process to get folks away from writing these large documents, reading these large documents cover to cover? And then even speaking about the FedRAMP and ATO, there's some vendors who have indicated that they've saved down to 30% of the time and 10% of the cost of an ATO. I have to see that to believe it, but there's some people working in that space, in the AI space. Has that been something you've looked at? Thank you.
I'll start from a FEMA perspective, not specifically on the security compliance side, but from the risk management side. We're looking at bringing AI to work with communities as they're putting together their risk management plan for things like climate change, and bringing AI to that problem set, and being able to utilize specific data from local communities and using templates to help them develop their risk management plan for their locality, and be able to have AI help with meshing all of that data so that they have a workable plan when the process is completed. And although we're not using AI in the way that the question that you asked was, but I know of cases where folks are applying AI to at least the security compliance perspective, because to your point, it's ripe for being able to bring in those technologies to really, that's where the efficiencies come in. When you take into account all of the costs associated with the manual processes in that whole set of processes, you can really achieve quite in my mind at least, great efficiencies.
And I know that they're looking at the common things like generating a statement of work or putting together reporting for HR. They're looking at those as a department, so that way we could benefit from that. So some of those concepts, those use cases are things that our DHS CIO and Deputy CIO are leading through that working group as well. So that way we won't have to build 7 of them or 8 of them, right? We can try to build one and share it across the department.
I mean, I echo that, what Kristin said about being able to leverage what one agency within DHS has done and leveraging it across the board. And that's a great point with the Chief Governance Officer, and each of our components have a Chief Governance Officer, AI Governance Officer, and we're looking at AI as a tool to, across the board, right? Not just technology solutions. How can we make our lives better, right? And that's the theme of how we want to leverage AI within our organization, right? And ethical use of AI, providing the proper governance structure, and being able to have, implement solutions that helps us.
One more thing too, I'll add, not necessarily governance related, Bill, but certainly, or AI related, but certainly governance related, is we're looking at the concept of software factory and where we might revisit the overall acquisition process, particularly in terms of our level 3 acquisitions that are delegated within ICE. So partnering with our component acquisition executive on how we might revisit that, as well as with the department. I know they're doing some of it as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add from an industry perspective, generative AI is getting very good at things like summarization and building frameworks and pulling out, salient points from 100-page or more documents. We've had a lot of success working with organizations, leveraging and augmenting typical large language models with something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG models. You may start hearing that out there now. And we're finding that through the use of RAG models, which are then trained with very specific data for the organization that we're working with, as well as something called chain of thought prompting or chain of thought learning, we can get very close to exemplar documentation and exemplar information. Now, there's a risk, a risk threshold level, right, that people are willing to accept or not accept. And I think a lot of this comes down to, and it's just AI in general, but in this case too, it comes down to the human factor, right? Whether humans are going to adopt these technologies or not relies a lot on whether or not they trust them. So a lot of this needs to be more explainable and be more open for people to understand how these models are making decisions. So we are doing it today. The technology is getting better every day. And I definitely think that over time, as the risk tolerance increases, right, or the trust increases, you're going to see that more and more.
Well, I think we have to wrap it up. So I appreciate all the panelists. I appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you. Really great forum today. So I think what we started out with was, what does the vision look like from the top? You got to hear a little bit of my story and about where we're pointing and where we're moving to as we transition from the Biden administration to whatever the next one is. Then we get a great panel to talk about more of a strategic viewpoint and an enterprise viewpoint in DHS from a mixture of DHS strategy leaders and also one industry panelist. Next, went from that strategic viewpoint to the procurement innovation viewpoint. So what are the boundaries that we have set, or what boundaries do we have to abide by to basically exercise that strategy? So how do we do the procurement? And then finally, the last panel, which was, hey, these are the boots on the ground folks, the CIOs at the tactical edge that are trying to push the technology out there to enable missions. So really great, kind of a great sequencing of panels and really good meaty takeaways. So I'd really like to thank all of the panelists. I thought they did a fantastic and excellent job. And I'd also like to thank the audience because I know the panel that I moderated on, it was all of your questions. And so I really appreciate the participation that you had, and then, you had some really great questions that made us maybe think a little bit about how we're interacting with industry. I'd like to thank Megan and the HSDF. I mean, thank you so much for bringing us in here and involving us in this event. And then Luke McCormick, thank you so much. He's the master facilitator between DHS CIO and industry, and so we really appreciate Luke's interaction. And then finally, I think one of the things that I had talked about in my talk was this idea of collaboration and industry as a force multiplier. I think we really got after that today. I think there's some things that we can do a little bit better, with the conversations that we're having today at this forum, at subsequent forums, and at the social hour, which is going to be immediately after this. So I think that's when the best conversations happen. But we got work to do. We have a mission to accomplish, both industry and government, different motivations, but we're talking matching government mission-oriented organizations with finite budget and for-profit organizations that are trying to help us. So there's definitely a challenge there. And then we have the government regulations that we have to abide by. But I think with the collective mind power in this room that we will be able to overcome that and meet our mission goals and defend against our adversaries. So thank you again.